One great way to immerse yourself in a particular situation and understand it truly is by experiencing it firsthand. However, not all significant events will happen in a single person's lifetime. Today, we are given the opportunity to make time move counterclockwise and see major periods of art unfold with our own eyes. Join us in our journey and let's explore arts by movements, post-World War II, postmodernism, and the 21st century. I am Jim, reporting post-World War II to the 21st century back. So the post-war means occurring or existing after a war especially. In Western usage, the phrase post-war era usually refers to the time since the end of the World War II. And more broadly, a post-war period is an interval immediately following the end of a war. And then a post-war period can become an interwar period or interbellum, when a war between the same parties resumes at a later date, such as the period between World War I and World War II. So by contrast, a post-war period marks the cessation of conflict entirely. So it is primarily and especially before the ascendancy of pop art and overlapping postmodernist 1960s movement. So pop art meaning it is an art based on modern popular culture and the mass media, especially as a critical comment on traditional fine art values. It is the end is complex due to its archetypes of the 1960s, contrasting with the leading developments in avant-garde music genres and in pop art, becoming to some audience mainstream before 1960. And then, its movements such as continuing factionalism and brutalism were overtaken by the definitely raucous counterculture of the 1960s, dominating as the decade wore on. Later resurgences to its stress on quick basic forms were common such as postmodernism and minimalism. Rehabilitation and reconstruction confronted the new Philippine government during the immediate post-war years. Maraming changes na nangyayari, like industry and agriculture yung pinaka-apektado, and the loss of lives and the property of the person. And property was incalculable. Then, American aid for rehabilitation increased the unreasonable fascination para doon sa Hollywood version of the American way of life. And yung mga gamit also syempre as American din. So noong panahon na to may mga trending na like the trend among Filipino artists in the 50s to 60s. So dahil dyan, the search for the Filipino identity and how to depict this in their artworks. So in the slide, a brainchild of Mrs. Imelda Remedios Visitacion Trinidad Romualdez, known as Mrs. Imelda R. Marcos, born July 2, 1929. She is a Filipino politician and convicted criminal who was First Lady of the Philippines for 20 years, during which she and her husband, President Ferdinand Marcos, stole billions from the Filipino people. And then yung andito sa kabila is the Nayong Pilipino naman, is a collection of replicas of the different house styles found all over the archipelago. Then this line is the 70s Soda Building of the Cultural Center of the Philippines, or mas kilala as CCP, which is a theater gallery museum complex. Then hanggang ngayon, andun pa rin siya, and located naman to sa Pasay. Then, pagdating sa may design ng CCP, si Leonardo Locsin is kilala bilang Filipino architect, artist, and interior designer, known for his use of concrete, floating volume, and simplistic design in his various projects. Then, an avid collector, he was fond of modern painting and Chinese ceramics. It has exhibited prestigious local and foreign artworks and a wide variety of theater arts. So in this slide naman, the government has likewise declared many historical monuments as cultural shrines, such as follows: Taal Church in Batangas, also known as Taal Basilica, also recognized as Asia's largest Catholic church. So imagine that, largest Catholic church daw siya in whole Asia. Then, hindi pa ako nakapunta dito, so sa mga nakapunta na or pupunta pa lang, Tignan natin kung talaga nga bang recognized ka as Asia's largest Catholic church. So the next slide naman is the Bacara Church Tower in Ilocos Norte. An enduring landmark in Ilocos Norte is the domeless bell tower of the Church of St. Andrew the Apostle in Bacara. This church was built in 1593 and inaugurated in 1783. The bell tower with the unusually elongated cupola was built in 1828. Then it is located the right side of the church. Ayan, makita mo dyan sa may slide, andyan siya sa may right. And then, made up of coral blocks and stucco with an original height of 50 meters and a 5-meter thick wall. So imagine that ang taas tsaka ang kapal niya. It was damaged in an earthquake in 1931, causing the topmost dome of cupola to tilt a little sideward on the right. So meron yatang dito na-apektuhan or na-damage doon sa pinakatuktok ng tower. And it was then called the Learning Tower. It has also honored outstanding Filipino artists through the National Artist Awards. The first recipients of these awards were Francisca Aquino or Francisca Reyes Aquino for her research on native folk dances. Dr. Reyes Aquino received the Philippine Republic Award of Merit for her untiring efforts in collecting, compiling, and propagating folk dances, and for her outstanding contribution to the advancement of Filipino culture in the field of dance. So in this slide naman is Guillermo Tolentino for sculpture. He is considered as the father of Philippine arts because of his great works like the famous Bonifacio Monument na andyan sa my slide and symbolizing Filipinos' cry for freedom, located in the intersection of EDSA and Rizal Avenue. And yung isa yung the oblation in UP, signifying academic freedom naman yan. So ngayon naman, dumako tayo sa may painting. So, si Fernando Amorsolo. Amorsolo used natural light in his paintings and developed the backlighting technique, chiaroscuro, which became his artistic trademark and his greatest contribution to Philippine painting. So, ayan yung nasa slide yung harvest. So for this slide naman is Carlos B. Francisco for painting, known as Botong Francisco. So si Francisco was a most distinguished practitioner of mural painting for many decades and best known for his historical pieces. He was one of the first Filipino modernists along with Gala Ocampo and Victoria C. And he's created artwork of First Mass in Limasawa and the Cockfight na nasa slide natin. So for the slide naman is si Juan Macpil for architecture. So si Juan Macpil is an architect, teacher, and civic leader, is a pioneer and innovator in Philippine architecture. In essence, Macpil creates contribution in his belief that there is such a thing as Philippine architecture, espousing architecture reflecting of Philippine traditions and culture. So ayan, nasa slide. Theater naman. This famous theater in downtown Escalta is another of Macpil's Art Deco gems done in non-exaggerated geometric style. So I don't know hanggang ngayon kung andito pa rin ba yung Capitol Theater, pero hanggang ngayon naman andyan pa rin yung Escalta. And then ito pa yung isa, yung Quezon Institute. Ito naman is, this beautiful building is an Art Deco masterpiece set in the middle of a sprawling 6.5-hectare property along E. Rodriguez Sr. Avenue. So built in 1938 for the Philippines Anti-Tuberculosis Society. This amazing example of streamlined modern has delicate bridges linking several pavilions and various Art Deco details on the interior and exterior. So nung andito naman ako sa may Quezon Institute na nag-painting kami, really nakakatakot dito kasi ayun nga, sobrang laki niya, 6.5-hectare property siya. And then kahit hapon na kasi yung pinapunta kami ng director. Nakakatakot na siya kasi hapon na yon. And then nung pinack up na kami madaling araw, alas 3 yun. Takutan talaga, then nakakatakot talaga. Tapos yung ginawa pang movie dun is horror siya. And then ito naman yung The Quiapo Church. So officially known as the Minor Basilica of the Black Nazareth. The original Quiapo Church burned down in the late 1920s. So the church was reconstructed in 1933 from plans, of course, by Napel. Its defense has slight Baroque influences and was further refined by Jose Maria Zaragoza in the 1980s. So, ngayon naman dito tayo sa my music. So, si Antonio Molina. So, Molina, known as the Dean of Filipino Composers, was born in Quiapo, Manila on December 26, 1894. So, late happy birthday to him. And he wrote lang naman over 500 musical compositions. So, imagine that 500, ang dami nun. And then, including dun yung Hating Gabi and Awit ni Maria Clara. And taught some of the country's musical icons like Lucrecia Casilag and Felipe de Leon. So ngayon naman, dito tayo sa may literature. So si Jose Garcia Villa is considered as one of the finest contemporary poets regardless of race or language. Then si Villa, who lived in Sigalong, Manila, introduced the rivers, consonants, rhyme scheme, including the comma poems, that made full use of the punctuation mark in innovative poetic way. And then ito naman yung nasa kabilang picture is si Amado B. Hernandez for literature then. It was while he was imprisoned that he wrote his most notable work. So nasa kulungan daw siya noon, nagsulat siya noon. And then he wrote Isang Di Panglangit, in English as Sketch of Heaven, then which later won a Republic Cultural Heritage Award. And yung isa niya pang ginawa is yung Bayang Malaya, or in English, Renation, which later won a Balagtas Award. So once again, these all form part of the new society's intensive cultural campaign in its recognition of the artist's important role in the building of society. So, binigay ko na yung mga background, yung mga history, kung saan malalaman nyo rin naman sa mga i-report ng mga kasunod ko. So good luck and enjoy.
This is Rainier Maria Entoma reporting the post-World War II art movements.
So how is post-World War II movement happened? After the World War II, the focus of much more of the art shifted to the New York City. There was no small part because of the move, either permanent or temporary, of so many European artists to the New York City during the war. These avant-garde artists shifted to the discussion of what constituted of America in touch of abstract expressionism among other movements. Simply means that with an economy on the rise and on the artist community inspired by the European avant-garde, many of whom had relocated to the United States of America, emerged relatively undamaged from the World War II. New York developed as a center of artist activity, challenging Paris as the international art of world center as Europe began the process of dealing with immense trauma. In the 1950s, abstract expressionism rose to prominence, followed by the neo-dada, pop, minimalism, conceptual art that will be discussed later, among other styles throughout the next decade. Post-war American work is more of a historical period than a style of collection of ideas, and it's most typical used by the auction houses to refer art created between the 1945 and the 1970, means differentiating from the modern and impressionist before and the contemporary art. So the first art movement that being described in the post-World War II art period is the abstract expressionism. It is all about the paint and draw using instinct, self-expressionism to spontaneously arrange the space, line, shape, and the color. It is mainly movement of painter to characterized by the focus on abstraction as means to express the personal feelings and emotion. It started from the 1940s to the 1950s. There are two main divisions that being described in the abstract expressionism style, namely the action-filled painting and the color-filled painting. Action-filled painting is much more violent about the physical act of painting over the subject matter. It is characterized by the use of gestural abstraction when applied to the canvas and often used as a simplified colors. One of the best examples of it is the Jackson Pollock autumn rhythm from the 1950s. It is used by the drip technique by which he controlled the application of multiple layers or paint created through the physical touch of painting. The next one is the colored field painting. It is described as much more calmer using large canvas with saturated painting, and it is seen as the simple expression of complex thought. It refers to the particular style of American abstract expressionism associated with the New York School of Modern Art. One of the best examples of it is paint by Mark Rothko, White, Red on Yellow from the 1950s. Mark Rothko artworks consist of 3 or 4 bands of colors that being described as the colored field painting. The edges of shapes are feathered and soft. The paints are applied by rugs and sponges, creating by many layers and depth. Next one is the Neo-Dada or Neo-Dadaism. It was first popularized in the early 1950s, resurrecting the irony of the original Dada movement. The term has been applied to a wide range of creative artwork, mostly notably junk art, the use of found object, and the utilization of everyday activities and objects as a social and aesthetic critic movement. The term is applied to the work of the artists such as Robert Rasenbeck and Jasper Johns because of the use of collage, assemblage, and found materials, and their apparently aesthetic agenda. Dada was formed in the negative reaction to the arts of folly of the First World War and led to art, poetry, and performance, often satirical and sensical in the nature. But from the 1950s, Rauschenberg and Johns and others began to include popular image and absurdist construct in their work. There were also strong echoes in the Dada in the environments happening to the 1950s and 60s. Many Dada artists believe that the audience interpretation of a piece, not the artist's intent, determine its meaning, thereby encouraging the move toward the viewer as a part of their artwork. This was highlighted by the chance foundings and mass media, which helped them to remove the artist's preconceived importance and instead focus on the viewer's interpretation of the piece. There was being described that Dada was the first conceptual art movement where the focus of the artist was not getting crafty, aesthetically pleasing objects, but on making the art often offended Borges' sensibilities and the generated difficulties question about the society and the role of the artist and the purpose of it. Neo-Dadaism was started from the 1950s to the 1960s. One of the best examples of it is the Jasper Johns flag from the 1954. Since creating his first flag painting in the 1954, 2 years after honorably discharged from the army, Jasper Johns has made over 40 work based on the flag, including the monochrome and the triple flag variation. Johns has said that these works are both painted flag and paintings of a flag. It was being described that John, as a boy, was told by his father that he had been named in the honor of Sergeant William Jasper as a hero who had recovered and reflown the Mortrin flag at Front Sullivan on the June 28, 1776 after the British shell destroyed its flags. This was inspired by the story of how Jasper Johns creating the flag from the 1954. Next that being described in the art movement is the pop art, which means the reflection of modern culture and the post-war consumer culture. Post-war optimism and cultural revelation of pop art was being said during the 1950s and in the early 1960s 1960s, both the United States and the Western European countries saw unparalleled political and economic growth. This expansion was accompanied by a cultural revolution which was epitomized by Elvis Presley, Marilyn Monroe, and a slew of other celebrities. As a result, television has supplanted radio as the most popular form of medium and so on. The ideas of abstract expressionism dominated the contemporary art landscape throughout this time period when it came to the main art trend. Despite the fact that the abstract expressionism dominated post-war American art, it was the first American art movement to gain the international recognition. As a result of it, the rise of pop art movement in the both United States and the United Kingdom has usually seen as a reaction to abstract expressionism art, mostly from the pop art, commonly an object-based subject matter with ideas that are highly recognizable, more on vivid colors with bold shades, and it was started from the 1950s to the 1960s. One of the best example is the Andy Warhol Mao from the 1972. Warhol is the most known for his stylistic portraits of pop culture icons such as celebrities and political figures. As a talented painter, printmaker, and filmmaker, Warhol used the method of mass production to create some of the most iconic images from the 60s and 70s, but exploiting consumerism and the mass media. On to the last art movements from the post-World War II is the minimalism. Minimalism art, which broke away from the overly expressive abstract expressionism, stripped its artwork of all the meaningful, symbolic, and emotional and personal content and began to investigate the essence and substance of things. It is more on action painting that being employed the medium and the substance of its work to emphasize the simplicity of its work through the sleek, geometric, that being presented a radically new, literal, and objective aesthetic feeling. This idea was to strip the medium of essential, that's why most of its work is in three-dimensional. Started from the 1960s to the 1970s in the United States. One of the best being described in the minimalism is work of Richard Senna, Balance from the 1970. Serra created the large scale of steel sculptures using the nature of his material to his advantage. His minimalistic style connects the art with the process. Last but not the least is the conceptual art. Conceptual art is based on the notion that the essence of art is an idea or a concept that maybe exists distinct form and the absence of an object is representation. Conceptual arts can take or nearly any form of appearance. This is because, unlike a painter or sculptor who will consider how best to express their idea using paint or sculptural materials and techniques, a conceptual art is use whatever materials and form is most appropriate for conveying their message, which could have ranged from a performance to a written description. Although conceptual artists do not adopt a single style of form, and several things emerged in the late 1960s. From the conceptual art subject matter may vary a wide spectrum from the political, social, and cultural which goes beyond the traditional limitation. It started from the 1960s to the 1970s. One of the best examples that being described to conceptual art is made by Dennis Oppenheim annual ring St. John River, Fort Kane, Maine from the 1968. Oppenheim is known for the conceptual performance and earth art. His work shown on the right is mix of all of these things. He connects the act of showing the show with the pattern of trees growth to the idea of the division of Canada and the United States by earth, by time, and water. After we talk about the post-war art movements in the World War II, let's take a look about the architecture in the post-war period here in the Philippines. So, the devastation brought by the World War II coupled by economic agencies gave way to the extension of slowly emerging architecture concept to detach from the bondage of traditional form. From the 1946, the independent Philippines expressed its identity by implementing modernism through utilization and reinforcement, concentration, steel to a glass. The predominance of cubic form, geometric shapes in the Cartesian grids, and the absence of applied decoration. From the 1947, a corps of architects and engineers were asked to study the modern US and Latin America capitals and the formula of a master plan for Manila. As we see in these great works of architect from the 1950s, we also witness the space age aesthetics and the soap modernism, which experimented with the sculptural plasticity of poured concrete to come up with a soft and seamless organic form with the use of thin shell technology. From the space age, we have there the Victor Teocus UP International Center and the Jose Zaragoza's Union Church. From the Soap Modernism, Church of Holy Sacrifice and Peel Atomic Research Center is one of the best example of it. Also in 1950s, the height of buildings was limited to 13 meters by law. With the amendment of Manila Ordinance Number 4131, a high-rise fever redefined as Manila's skylines. One of the best example of it is the Angel Nakpil's 12-story Pikash building, considered as the first skyscraper in the Philippines. And last but not the least, the Caesar Conscious Insular Life building, the first office building to surpass the old 10-meter high restriction. So let's talk about Federico Illustre, a consulting architect from 1950s to the 1970s, worked on the building at the Elliptical Road in Quezon City. He started his career as a draftsman for Juan Nakpil. He graduated from Mapua Institute of Technology. He passed his licensure exam in 1937, and he was the one who built the most known Quezon Memorial Circle, the centerpiece in the 65-meter high Deco Quezon Memorial Monument, composed of 3 pylon tops by winged figure representing the 3 island group. One is Cesar Homero Concho Sr. from 1907 to 2003. He was the first university architect of the University of the Philippines, and when the university transferred to Diliman from Padre Paura in the late 1940s, Cesar Concho was tasked to continue what Louis Croft has started. He also one of the architects selected by the President Rojas in 1947 to study trends in architecture and engineering to design the buildings of the capital city, especially in his position as the chief architecture of the UP Diliman campus. One of his best artwork that can be seen here from now is the Melchor Hall UP Diliman in Quezon City and the Church of the Risen Lord located at the UP Diliman, Quezon City. This is the Angel E. Nakpil from 1940 to 1980, a leading architect who also a nephew of architect and national artist Juan Nakpil. He graduated from the UST in 1931, also a Harvard training architect, and also he served as the City Planning Commissioner of Manila during the post-war reconstruction years from 1947 to 1949. One of his known building that being seen here today is the National Press Club. The National Press Club building was inaugurated on December 30, 1955 with the President Magsaysay as a sponsor of it, along with several cabinet members and the other government official and other donors. The National Press Club building became the most historic monument to the ideals of press freedom and unity among colleagues in the country's newspaper today. It was designed by yours truly, Architect Angel Inacpil, and was constructed by Alberto T. Abaya. And the next one is Alfredo J. Luz, brother of the known national artist for sculpture Arturo J. Luz. A.J. Luz was at the cutting edge of the Philippine modernism in the late 50s and the early 60s. His body of work includes the Menzi Building on Ayala Avenue, the Amon Trading Building on Buendia, the LNS Building on the Rojas Boulevard, Maynila, and the Phil Oil Refinery Service in the Limay, Batangas. One of his known buildings today is the Simbing Building and the World Health Organization that being located at the UN Avenue, Taft, Manila. Next artist here in the Philippines is Otilio Arellano from 1916 to 1981. He is the son of Arcadio Arellano and the nephew of Juan Arellano. Otilio Arellano rose into the architectural profession during the 50s and 60s, becoming one of the architects representing the Philippines into some international exposition. He was also chosen by Imelda Marcos to restore the Metropolitan Theater that can be seen here in the Manila. He won some prestigious awards like the Patnubay ng Sining at Kalinangan from 1970, additional at PRC Outstanding Architect of the Year from 1977. Also, one of the known buildings that being used by now from his works is the National Bureau of Investigation, which we known as NBI. It formed from November 13, 1936 at the headquarters of Taft Avenue, Manila. And one of his known works is the Philippines Pavilion from 1964. Let's proceed with Filipino from 1917 to 2000. He is a physical planner. Also, he formed a partnership with Gabino de Leon and Homero Ingles that formed his own architectural firm in 1951. Also, he won some prestigious awards like Patnubay and Sining again at Kalinangan from 1976, again with the PRC Outstanding Architect of the Year from 1982. He known by being one of the best architectural here in the Philippines that until now we've seen his work like the Batasan Pambansa, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Developmental Academy of the Philippines, and the Philippine Veterans Park. The concept of Philippine Veterans Park that conceived from the World War II in 1956 when a war repatriation agreement was signed between Japan and Philippines. The Philippine Veterans Bank was born on June 18, 1963 through the Republic Act No. 3518. So let's proceed to the second to the last architect here in the Philippines is Gabriel Formoso from 1915 to 1996. He started his career in 1950s and by 1960 he was already successful and become the most popular architect of the residents of the posh Makati villages. Also one of the people selected in 1963 to the Planning and Work Committee from the future Pamantasan Lungsod ng Maynila. He was being received by most prestigious awards like PRC Outstanding Architect of the Year 1979, in 1977 from the Patnubay ng Sining at Kalinangan, in 1973 the Republic Culture Heritage Awards, and the United Architect of the Philippines Likha Award from 1990. And today, his one of great works is the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas located at the Ross Boulevard and the Lantondena Building. Carlo Arguelles from 1917 to 2008 is our last architect that being described from the post-war period here in the Philippines. Carlos Arguelles is a Filipino architect who was known for being a leading proponent of the international style of architecture in the Philippines in the 1960s. He served as a professor in the design at the UST College of Architecture and Fine Arts, appointed as a Dean of the UST College of Architecture of Fine Arts from 1954 to 1959. American Building Institute of Architects and Philippine Institute of Architecture. His known building is located at the UN Avenue Street, Maynila, which is the Pilam Life, and the International Rice Research Institute that being located at the Los Baños, Laguna.
Hi there, this is Ahlianna. Welcome to Postmodernism.
In the 1950s, traces of postmodernism began as a response against modernism, critiquing modernism's idealistic view of humanity and defining the progress of society beyond an era of modernity. These periods sprouted from suspicion and skepticism, challenging established assumptions about general certainties and truths. Postmodernism introduced new ideas in arts, literature, and architecture. The era did not define boundaries regarding how art should be, which showcases its anti-authoritarian nature. Gaining ascendancy in the 1960s, complex and contradictory ideas are embraced. In the lens of postmodern art, these are unstable and deceptive. Thus, irony, parody, and humor are the only ones that critic or revision can't overthrow. Other distinguishing characteristics of art in the era include pluralism and diversity. Pluralism is defined as a society in which political authority is shared by multiple people, organizations, or entities. People of many cultural backgrounds maintaining their own traditions is an example of pluralism. Another example is when labor unions and employers collaborate to satisfy the needs of employees. Effects of postmodernism on artists and artworks. First, postmodernists had freedom with the art subjects, style, and commentary they use. It is an era that goes with the sense that anything goes. Emphasis on new forms of creativity. That's the effect of freedom with the art subjects. Another effect on artists and artworks is the juxtaposition of old and new. This is illustrated through adapting styles from previous periods and refitting them into modern art outside of their original context. Another, postmodernism also blurred the lines between what is considered fine or high art and what is considered low or kitsch art. Collision, collage, and fragmentation broke genre standards. Also, use of industrial items in art is introduced. Postmodernism is an era for considering self-awareness about style itself. This is because postmodernism is for challenging the rules that define art preferences. Notable artists in postmodernism. First is Cindy Sherman. In each shot, she appears as an actress in a variety of settings from various eras, all of which are stylized to represent a specific moment in time or genre. She plays with the idea of fragmented postmodern identity by taking on the roles of both photographer and subject in this early series of images. She uses her reflexive approach to challenge the idea of a set feminine role while simultaneously challenging representation itself. Must women constantly be depicted as victims and martyrs? She ironically puts herself both within and outside of the media, weakening the strength of women's representations by bringing this issue to the forefront. As a result, this reflects philosopher Jean Baudrillard's concept of the hyperreal society, in which identifying the real is impossible. Neither the representation nor the real remains, just the hyperreal. Another notable postmodernism artist is Andy Warhol. He uses an aesthetic that is common in the advertising sector and has become common in his work as well. Warhol's method also has a newspaper printing feel to them. The artist defied the classical form of representation known in modern art by including all of this into his diptych. The portrait's repetition within the diptych might be interpreted as an ironic statement on both expanding mass production and art's authenticity. Frequently questioned the traditional notion of fine art with his artworks. Andy Warhol's artwork can be interpreted as a fun response to this subject. The next artist is Marina Abramovic. Marina Abramovic contradicted the modernist notion of the unique and autonomous artist figure. This is through the renunciation of authorship and control from the artist to the audience. She marked a pivotal point in the postmodern shift towards audience engagement. In Rhythm Zero, Marina Abramovic sat calmly in a gallery, inviting her audience to do whatever they wanted to her, with no response from her. They were given a variety of things, including a gun, a bullet, a comb, a saw, olive oil, cake, wire, and sulfur, to choose for pleasure or pain. After eliciting a playful response at first, she was subjected to an increasing level of hostility during the 6-hour performance, concluding in violent and unsettling events. Abramovic's desire to push herself and her body to physical and mental extremities in her performances was evident in this piece. It is entitled Rhythm Zero, or 7 Easy Pieces. The fourth artist on this list is Roy Lichtenstein. He challenges the traditional painting approach with images that have never been seen before in modern art. One consists of 2 segments and is a large format painting. The artwork resembles a comic strip in appearance. Both the motifs and the speech bubbles and onomatopoeia in the image are inspired by comic strip aesthetics. There was no recurring topic of the 2 world wars that humanity had to endure in the 20th century in postmodern art. Although Roy Lichtenstein's work does not directly address the Second World War, the motif selection and presentation in pop aesthetics can be understood as an ironic remark on war's glorification that makes it a part of postmodernism. Conceptual art. This movement is explicitly interested in deconstructing what constitutes a work of art. Conceptual art is art for which the concept or idea behind the work is more important than the finished art object. When an artist uses a conceptual form of art, it means that all of the planning and decisions are made beforehand and the execution is a perfunctory affair. It is frequently intended to challenge, offend, or assault the beliefs of many of those who view it. It is fraught with controversy. A well-known conceptual artist is Joseph Kosuth. His piece, 1 and 3 Chairs, is a reflection of Plato's cave allegory and the type of artistic investigation of Plato's philosophy. The idea of an object represents the highest of all realities in this metaphor. Neo-expressionism. In this movement, recognizable subjects are portrayed in an emotional way. Its overall style is characterized by brilliant colors and contrasts in the Fauvist tradition, quick, aggressive brushwork, warped subject matter, and a typically spontaneous manner, occasionally adding found things. In Nani, Small Bears, and Boogeyman, Rego stated that a story is needed to start an artwork. The title Adieu reflects a sense of growing separation. One of them is only half there, while the other is going away. Basilists began to paint figures upside down in the late 1960s, insisting that viewers should concentrate on the lines and marks of the painting rather than its resemblance to reality. Feminist art. Postmodern feminism combines elements of post-structuralism, postmodernism, and French feminism. It is not defined by style. Instead, it is an art that seeks to challenge the dominance of men in both art and society. It is to gain recognition and equality for women artists and to question assumptions about womanhood. The purpose of postmodern feminism is to disrupt society's patriarchal conventions, which have resulted in gender inequity. Many female artists have used postmodern art to express their political beliefs and the battle for more women's rights. In Do Women Have to Be Naked to Get into the Main Museum, it intends to draw attention to the fact that while women, as naked themes, are welcome in major and prestigious museums, artists find it difficult to enter these establishments with their own works. In Carolee Schneemann's Interior Scroll, it located the source of female artists' imaginative and creative force within their own bodies. Schneemann's so-called vulvic space unified female art making with sexual experience, and thus shifted it away from the dominant masculine art precedent toward a feminist exploration of the body. This is an exemplary feminist work, as almost all depictions of female sexuality were rendered by male artists or found in pornography. As the word install means putting something inside of something else, installation art is a term generally used to describe artwork located in three-dimensional interior space. It typically occupies a gallery room. However, in postmodernism era, installation art defined the sites used for contemporary art institutions in order to accommodate enormous works made up of massive collages of manufactured and discovered objects. Moving elements and lighting are frequently used in these installations and collage. As we can see, Jenny Holzer's signs use artistic elements to convey specific statements, such as, "Protect me from what I want." In Blocking of Rue Visconti, it is an installation art of oil barrels in one of Paris streets.
I am Patricia Sario. Welcome to the 21st century. So now we will move to the art of the 21st century called the contemporary arts. Let's start first by defining what really is the art of the 21st century. Number one, it is the art of the day. When we say art in the 21st century or the contemporary art, we are talking about the different art creations that were produced today in this age. It is new and timely regardless of its style, medium, whether it is a sculpture, painting, photography, drawing, or even painting, or even artistic movements. Number two, it is the art that provides opportunities to reflect on the society. Many or most of the art creations today convey deep messages or thoughts about the current issues of our society. They do not just give emphasis on aesthetics, but they use artworks to participate or advocate against societal issues, mostly about gender, politics, inequality, and discrimination. And number three, it is the art that relates to practices and aesthetic designs. So under contemporary arts, there are conceptual arts and performance arts that convey ideas or concepts that relate to practices and aesthetic designs. These arts go beyond the borders of art as it is understood within the modern and classical art periods. Before going further with the discussion about the arts in the 21st century, let's discuss first why are arts so important today. Number one, it is because it develops one's sense of identity and self-esteem. Art helps individuals to express themselves, their society, and their relationship with other people. Art also helps in developing a person's one sense of identity, which results in building self-esteem. In a study conducted by Prof. Michael Anderson, it was revealed that students who actively participate in arts in school are more likely to improve their academic and social life, which help them to build confidence and esteem. Art is a tool that can be used to express your emotions and thoughts. You can do this by making songs, poems, acting, drawing, painting, or any other form of art. Number 2, it helps to understand and appreciate diverse culture and social values. Participation in the arts enables individuals to appreciate and comprehend the different cultures and values that exist in our diverse society. The arts have been described as becoming the shared link, the glue that shapes our understanding of how we see ourselves and each other. In other words, art helps us to understand that there are different ways societies live, and people have a variety of beliefs that we should understand and respect. Third, art is important in the 21st century because of its aesthetic value. One of the biggest benefits of contemporary art is its aesthetic value. In fact, many contemporary artworks are used for decorations of venues and places, just like how outdoor sculpture parks are made to brighten up city lands. Number 4 is the relaxation and the inspiration it gives. Viewing art has been shown in studies to be relaxing. In fact, art is used in some of the increasingly popular mindfulness exercises. This is beneficial because it teaches many people to do arts at other times, which can help them reduce anxiety and depression symptoms. Furthermore, contemporary arts seeks to depict and comment on the world. Such depictions and commentary have the potential to motivate people to take and push viewers to become better versions of themselves. Number 5 is the personal expression. We can say that the perspectives expressed are valuable to the society because they provide us a unique glimpse into the artist's minds and thoughts. The selection of display of art in someone's office or home decor is a personal expression, just as the creation of art is. A person can exercise their own choice and express elements of their own mind and thoughts by selecting art pieces that appeal to them personally, even if they have no personal artistic talent or interest in making art. So now we will move to the characteristics of the arts in the 21st century. As I previously stated, the most memorable aspect of the contemporary art is, ironically, the fact that it lacks a single characteristic. It is defined by the artist's ability to innovate and create a contemporary masterpiece that is relevant to the times. However, there are a few technical characteristics of contemporary artworks to look for. Number 1 is the innovation in art. Contemporary artists are well known for introducing new forms of art to the world. While various art mediums are combined and diverse ideas are expanded or combined, new types of art is created at the same time. Modern artists pioneered collage art, various forms of assemblage, kinetic art, various genres of photography, animation, drawing plus photography, land art or earthworks, and performance art. Number 2 is the new mediums. The use of various objects and materials was another characteristic that fueled the contemporary art. These were everyday materials that have been retooled or reimagined into one-of-a-kind works of art. Painters, for example, used newspapers as a backdrop for their canvases. Using something like this would have been unheard a few years ago. Alec Monopoly, a contemporary artist who incorporates newspapers and comic strips as backdrops to his graffiti paintings, is one of the examples of a contemporary artist who uses newspaper in this manner. Similarly, everyday objects such as cars, chairs, and boxes have been expertly used to create assemblages. Number 3 is the use of color. Color has traditionally been used to add depth and life to paintings. Contemporary artists, on the other hand, experimented with colors and used them unconventionally to create new textures and themes in their own artwork. David Krakow has used these techniques in many of his art pieces, particularly his collections of the paper cuts, which is known for its vibrant color palette. Modern art movements such as Fauvism, Expressionism, and color-filled painting were among the first to make extensive use of color. Number 4 is the new techniques. Contemporary art is not just about the experimenting with colors and objects, but it is also given birth to the novel techniques that serve as the genre's foundation today. When looking for examples of contemporary art, one of the most important factors to evaluate is if the item employs innovative techniques for the present time period. Surrealist artist Angelo Accardi is well known not only for his painting, but also for his paper cuts that combine old and new conventional art tributes. The end result is something really one of a kind. After knowing what is the art in the 21st century and its characteristics, let's now move on to the most influential artists of the art in the 21st century. Number 1 in line is Takashi Murakami of Tokyo, Japan. Takashi Murakami's culturally blended modern art style has garnered both praises and criticisms. His detractors accuse him of being a sellout for approaching art as a business and developing a digestible type of Japanese pop culture. He is becoming a famous contributor to modern art with his trademark style term superflat, which is a hypothesis based on the flat 2D images of Japan manga and anime. In fact, Takashimi Murakami was invited by Marc Jacobs, the designer of Louis Vuitton, to engage on a 13-year initiative to infuse Murakami's style with the LV Mark Hall brand in 2002. Number 2 is JR from France. So JR's artwork is rebellious photography with an undisclosed identity that takes extraordinary risks to communicate his photographic viewpoint. The artist is well known for his beautiful portraits and street art. In 2011, JR won the TED Prize, an award for people with a creative, bold wish to change the world and establish the Inside Out project. The reward provides him with $100,000 to support his initiative, and JR sold an extra 6 images for $850,000 to encourage budding local artists. Now, JR continues to inspire and outperform his peers and has an unbelievable sell through rate of around 80%, which nets him approximately $600,000 each year. Third is Mark Bradford of the USA. Mark Bradford was born in Los Angeles in 1961. In 1997, he received his first MFA from the California Institute of the Arts. His art depicts racial crimes and poverty problems. Mark Bradford is an African-American artist working today. He engages in a broad conceptual processes. He is also a multimedia abstract painter. The mining of emotional and political terrain is shown by this artist. He focuses on elements that hint at something bigger. Mark's works are now collections of the Hirshhorn Museum and Sculpture Garden in Washington, D.C., the Museum of the Modern Art in New York, the Tate Gallery in London, and the Walker Center in the Minneapolis. Number 4 is Anish Kapoor of India. Anish Kapoor is a well-known British Indian artist who is well known for his abstract sculptures and several accolades. For his contributions to the visual arts, Kapoor has received the Turner Prize in 1991, the Commander of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire in 2003, and the Knighthood in 2013. In addition to his outstanding public sculptures, Anish Kapoor has created a range of unique plates in appealing colors. Later on, you will see one of Anish Kapoor's works in my next presentation. Number 5 is Jeff Koons of USA. Jeff Koons' modern paintings first gained attention in the early 1980s. He is well known for his slightly sought-after sculptures of animals and other unusual creations. Jeff Koons' innovative sculptures employing stainless steel polish to the point of seeming mirror-like brighten to the scenery. Jeff Koons' sculptures have been described as frightening, magnificent, and sophisticated, while also generating an image of flawless beauty. You will see one of Jeff Koons' creation later on. After meeting the most famous artists in the 21st century, we will now move to the most famous artworks in the contemporary arts in the world. So, first in the line was the Cloud Gate. As I mentioned earlier, I will show you Anish Kapoor's work. So here it is, the Cloud Gate, which is made in the year 2006. So Cloud Gate is a public sculpture that serves as the centerpiece of AT&T Plaza at Millennium Park in Chicago, the most populated city in the United States. It is constructed of 168 stainless steel plates that have been welded together and set on the ground. It is 36 by 66 by 42 feet in size and weighs around 100 tons. Because of its form, the sculpture has been dubbed as the Bean, which Anish Kapoor originally despised but ultimately embraced. Since its installation, the artwork has become one of the world's most famous public works. Time magazine characterizes it as a must-see picture, opportunity, and more of a destination than a piece of art. The New York Times calls it as a tourist attraction and an amazing item, while the USA Today calls it as a colossal abstract work. The Cloud Gate is the most well-known piece of a modern artist today. So next is created by Banksy in the year 2002. This graffiti depicts a young girl with her hair and clothes flying on the wind. She stretches her hand to grasp the blown-away thread of her heart-shaped crimson balloon. Banksy Girl with a Balloon picture has been used several times on prints, t-shirts, tattoos, and other items. Justin Bieber, the singer, got a tattoo based on the artwork. Banksy's image of a girl letting go of a heart-shaped balloon was chosen as the nation's favorite artwork. Third is the balloon dog created by Jeff Koons in the year 1994 to 2000. Jeff Koons is one of the most controversial artists in the world, whose artworks, though some of the best known in the world, are derided by many for being crass and inartistic. The Balloon Dogs, a set of 5 works by Jeff Koons, are his most well-known sculpture. They are made from balloons that have been twisted into the shape of a toy dog. They are composed of mirror-polished stainless steel and measure about 307 by 114 centimeters. They are also completed with a transparent coating in blue, magenta, orange, yellow, or red. On November 12, 2013, Koons Balloon Dog, which is the orange one, was sold for about $58.4 million at Christie's post-war and contemporary art evening sale in New York City. This made it the most expensive piece by a living artist sold at auction at the time. So, Amy Dempsey, a critic, hailed Koons Balloon as an incredible presence, a gigantic, enduring monument. Number 4 is the Sky Mirror, created also by Anish Kapoor in the year 2001. So, Anish Kapoor is well-known for his abstract sculptures. He is critically acknowledged as modern artist who has received multiple honors. Sky Mirror is a public sculpture located outside the Wellington Circus Theatre in Nottingham, England. It is a concave dish of a polished stainless steel inclined up towards the sky that weighs over 10 tons and has a diameter of 20 feet. A bigger version of Sky Mirror was exhibited in the New York City's Rockefeller Center from September 19 to October 27, 2006. It was 35 feet in circumference, weighed 23 tons, and stood around 3 floors of sky talls. So, it is a beautiful piece of art that provides visitors with a spectacular experience and a vivid impression of the skyline. Number 5, and the last one, is the untitled film still number 25 by Cindy Sherman in the year 1978. Earlier, one of the reporters discussed who is Cindy Sherman. So now I will share one of her artwork called the Untitled Film Still series, which is a collection of 69 black and white pictures of herself. Self-love it is. It received both critical and popular success. In these photographs, she portrays herself as a female heroine and series reminiscent of 1950s Hollywood cinema. Although the spectator has the impression that they must have witnessed this incident, the pictures are wholly Sherman's inventions, or to put it in another way, they are fiction about fiction. And the untitled film still is untitled film still number 21, is possibly the most well-known image in her collection. That's it. So now we will move on to the second to the last topic of my report, which are the types of the contemporary arts. I will just briefly discuss it to you because they were already discussed earlier in the presentations. So number 1 is the Fauvism. Fauvism is a reaction to Impressionism. Its main distinction was color, flat, and extensive stains. Here you can see the creation of Henri Matisse, entitled Woman with a Hat. Number 2 is Cubism. Cubism was created by Picasso and Braque. They used neutral color tones to create a four-dimensional effect to their artwork. So here is the Three Musicians by Pablo Picasso. Number 3 is the Expressionism. Expressionism originated in Germany as a means of expressing human anguish. The paintings were full of drama, expressions, and caricatures. One of the most famous artists in Expressionism was Vincent van Gogh. So we all know him, right? Here you can see his work, self-portrait with a straw hat and a artist's smock. Number 4 is the Dadaism. Dadaism arose as a protest against the World War I. It mocked technology and progress. Its main objective was to scandalize the bourgeoisie of the time. So here you can see Marcel Decamp's work named Fountain. Number 6 is Surrealism. Surrealism painters use resources such as the animation of the inanimate world, the isolation of anatomy, and fantastic machines that evoke chaos. Here you can see Salvador Dali's work named Dream Caused by the Flight of a Bee around a pomegranate a second before awakening. So it was made around 1944. And the last one is the abstract art. It encompassed the kinetic or the pop art. So the concept was just simply that anything that was drawn or created outside of the traditional perspective of reality held value either as an optical illusion or representative of something else not immediately assumed. So here is a creation of Pollock called Lavender Mist. So, after knowing what is the definition of the art in the 21st century, its characteristics, its famous artists, and the most famous artworks, we will know what makes the contemporary art unique. So, there are several ways to think about this. Classifying art as unique usually insinuates that it is a rare. What occasionally defines contemporary art or any type of art as unique is something that exists in the eye of the beholder of the critic. Contemporary art is more about experimentation and freedom while focusing on society and social impact. This brings us to our new commonly asked question in the conversation surrounding contemporary art. How is contemporary art different from the modern art? Which I'll leave it to you. Kindly put your answers in the G forms that Prof. Doctor will give to us. That's all. Thank you for listening and have a good day.
We have safely arrived in the present time. We hope that our little adventure help you reflect and appreciate how art affects our society. Thank you for traveling with us. Live through again next time. Remember that with art, values and experiences across years are still in every second.